It is the 4th for the first 2026. The time is 10 minutes past 10 British. That means, as always, one thing, that there are a multitude of F1 centric threads at which we need to pull. We'll talk about Ralf Schumacher on Lewis. We'll talk about Ralf Schumacher on Maximilian Verstappen. Claims of the Schumacher gene or lack thereof. We'll talk so too about Christian Horner. It will get techier than techie things over the next 20 minutes. I promise you. The F1 news beat never stops. We'll talk about Ford involvement as well. They're saying that they're getting involved in more than just their remit, that no longer is it just electric settings, that they're getting involved all over the shop as far as the internal combustion engine is concerned. I tell you what, this is going to get techier than techie things, and so too we'll talk about Ferrari. The one that they call Marc Marquez is now dubious, having doubts about Shell, their provider of sustainable fuels. Lest we forget, yesterday we talked about Aston Martin's advantage around Aramco, F2, F3 sustainable fuel provider. Therefore, they'll have length and breadth, expertise, experience in this field. Lest we forget that in F1 2009, if past his prologue, brawn settings, experience means something. So too Lewis Hamilton GP2 and the bloody tyres in 2007. Let's get into it. Let me show you this in the first instance, because this is techier than techie things. If we're talking about Maximilian Verstappen in the first instance. I mean, fatherhood does something to a man. Some say the chatter before Lily came along was that Max Verstappen will be a different man, that fatherhood changes people, that just like age and father time, risk management comes to the fore. No longer can you be a fire-breathing dragon of an F1 driver, some say. To which Max Verstappen responded, what are you talking about, mate? Nothing's going to change. If anything, I'll be doing more racing, not less. Well, Max is partially right, because on the back of Abu Dhabi Grand Prix losing the championship by 2 points, Max Verstappen of a former era, in a previous life, would have raged just as he did in 2024 Hungary. I'm on -5 brake bias and the thing still won't fudging turn. That was Max Verstappen then, though he's a new man now as at 2026. More mature. That's what brought GP to tears. The growth, the evolution of Maximilian Verstappen. Yeah, he's a fire-breathing dragon of an F1 peddler, and I wouldn't expect that to change anytime soon. However, he's now a father, and that comes with a different, more material sense of maturity. What happened at the end of Abu Dhabi was of moment. It was significant. Shows you who Max Verstappen is, and that he's not lost a step, but just gained some maturity, some say. Oh, and by the way, teammate of the future, some say, of Maximilian Verstappen. This chap, Arvid Lindblad. Now, a lot's been spoken about this dude. Helmut Marko referred to him as not potentially the next Max Verstappen. That would be an exercise in futility, but potentially the next Red Bull champion. Red Bull have always been a promoter of young, hot prospects. Helmut Marko said once upon a time that this dude reminded him, however, of Max Verstappen as far as his ability to mitigate for the risk and navigate changeable conditions on track. That some say is how you tell the very good from the greats when it's wet, when it's the great equaliser. Now, a couple of years back, Arvid Lindblad showed something similar at Silverstone, changeable conditions, worked his way through the field from the back to the front. That's Arvid Lindblad. He was the dude that looked Lando Norris in his face and said, you know what, mate, I want you to look me in my eyes, the whites of them, because you'll be seeing me in a couple of years' time, mate, in F1. And that speaks, I don't know, is there something to be said for the look and feel of a champion? Some say yes. That is the look and a feel of a champion. We'll be talking about that in a few years if he's there putting under manners Lando Norris. However, I remember when Lewis Hamilton first came to the field and there were a load of first, youngest this, first this, etc. And if past his prologue, Arvid Lindblad is carving his career out in the same image. Arvid Lindblad There's a lot being made of this. I want to read these out to you because I think it's interesting. Lindblad is the only FIA Formula 3 driver to have won both the sprint and feature races in the same weekend, securing the record at the British Grand Prix weekend in 2024. That's when Helmut Marko said he looked on Arvid Lindblad and he reminded him of Max Verstappen at the Norris Ring. Again, it's Donington 93, isn't it? Senna. It's Barcelona, Michael Schumacher. It's these dudes who are the greatest of greats in F1, have this ability to make the wet look like the dry. Max Verstappen in 2016 Brazil, Interlagos 2024 Max Verstappen again. This is the one common thread that runs throughout all the greatest drivers in F1. And if that's not enough, check this one out. In February 25, he completed his maiden private test in the AlphaTauri A204 at Imola. Upon request from the Red Bulls, Lindblad was then granted a super license at the ripe old age of 17. 17. I thought they amended the bloody rules. There was the Max Verstappen rule, right? That Max was in a Toro Rosso at 17, but it was deemed shortly thereafter too young, so they fixed the rule. Arvid Lindblad is youngest everything out here. It's techie. Then techie things. What's going on, Andash? You're a legend, mate. Puts a smile on my face to see your name. Eddie, absolutely in the chat. He also became the youngest race winner in FIA Formula 2 history, chat, securing the victory at Jeddah Sprint in 2025. 6 weeks later, he became the second youngest pole sitter in F2 history at Barcelona. Youngest everything. Tell me that dude, as far as his record-breaking setting, doesn't remind you of Max Verstappen. Maybe I should take heed Helmut Marko's counsel that it's an exercise in futility to compare Lindblad to Max Verstappen, anyone to Max Verstappen. But again, if you close your eyes and you look at the stats, if you see youngest this, first this, you'd be forgiven for thinking that they bear similarities. Could we see an F1 team valued at 6 billion? Benzi will get to it, I'm telling you. Let me talk about Ferrari though first. Let's talk about Ralf Schumacher and Lewis. Ralf Schumacher's come out and he said a couple of different things. It feels like beat up on Lewis Hamilton's season at the moment, and I desperately wish that dude can turn him around. Big Lewis Hamilton fan, despite what the naysayers and abbots of unreason say. 2006, do you know what I mean? That's when I started watching Lewis Hamilton, before he even stepped into F1. Lest we forget, this is F1, not Lewis Hamilton F1. I'm a Formula 1 fan first. I think most of us are. But Lewis Hamilton has put smiles and tears, brought tears to the eyes of so many F1 vets, purists and grizzled F1 veterans, that is worthy of note. Again, if you go back to 2006, GP2, Pizzioni on PK, Silverstone settings. The dude was a chaos merchant, a fire-breathing drag of an F1 peddler, the likes of which we may never see again. And I only say that to say this. The last couple of years, in fact, Lewis Hamilton has been struggling with a couple of different things, potentially age and losing a tenth or two in pace, potentially the ground effect cars that don't suit his driving style, missed the last of the late breakers, cars also that haven't suited his driving style. The Scuderia Ferrari last year with its rigidity of the suspension or lack thereof at the rear. He struggled. Ralf Schumacher's talked to this point. He said, listen, if you're expecting something to change for Lewis Hamilton in 2026, now that we're out of ground effect era cars, that potentially you've got another thing coming, that you might not want to hold your breath, Ralf Schumacher says. And Ralf Schumacher's always got something to say, particularly about Lewis Hamilton. So maybe we should take his soliloquy with a pinch of salt, maybe. But I think he might be barking up in terms of common sense. I think he might be barking at the right tree. If Lewis Hamilton has been struggling with twitchy cars that he can't have the confidence in, that lack the rigidity of the suspension at the rear, that he can't take these high speeds through high speed turns, if that's the problem, then the 2026 cars, if rumour on the F1 curb is to be believed, they're only going to be twitchier, more difficult to drive, that you're going to have to spin a very many different plates as far as the bloody energy and managing that. George Russell told us that this is the managerial championship in 2026. So then extrapolate that out, forward forecast then. What would you expect from Lewis Hamilton at the ripe old age of 41 to do? Can you teach an old dog new tricks. Well, listen, if anybody can, Sir Lewis Hamilton can. First round Hall of Fame, Mount Rushmore of F1, 7-time champion, GOAT, setting some say, oh, and by the way, to make things worse over at Scuderia Ferrari, because this isn't all just Sir Lewis Hamilton's fault, right? They didn't provide him nor Charles Leclerc with the bloody car, and apparently things could get worse over there at Ferrari. We talked about Aston Martin yesterday, and that they hold some advantage as far as sustainable fuel. This isn't just the power unit championship, it's all about fuel and management. Efficiency, reliability will come into play if we're talking about the winners and losers in 2026, meaning therefore Aramco, they've got experience of this, right? 2023, 24, they've been providing their fuel, advanced sustainable fuels, to F2 and F3 cars. Therefore they have length of service, and in that there will be advantage and lap time for the team to whom they provide sustainable fuel. Mention no names. Aston Martin is going to get turkey chat. Mark Marquez, though, has come out and said he thinks Shell are flopping the case, that this is equal and opposites, that all of the advantage that Aramco have by dint of their experience and length and breadth of service, Shell do not. Shell are the provider of Scuderia Ferrari and their advanced fuels in 2026. Here's what this article says. This is techie, again, courtesy of Moto Passion, that Marc Marquez, MotoGP champion last year, gazillion time champion, that he's hesitant about renewing his contract with Ducati because of the sustainable fuels that Shell will be providing them. Here's what the article says. Marc Marquez says, quote, that you have to be very intuitive about choosing your team for 2027 when their sustainable fuel regs kick in. With so many changes to the engines, the device, the tyres, the aerodynamics, many people are forgetting a crucial factor in 2027, synthetic fuel in MotoGP. Having the best supplier could be key in the new regulations, and there's a growing rumour that Shell isn't doing too well. Shell reportedly having problems, the supplier of advanced fuels for Scuderia Ferrari in 2026, that they're having problems with their synthetic fuel. The least advanced, Aramco have nailed it because, again, experience. And again, this isn't me saying, I know that there were F2 and F3 reliability with F2 and F3 cars last year. I get it. But this isn't about being best. This is about being, this isn't about being good. This is about being better than the rest, right? This is relativity. So if Aramco have all of the experience and the other teams, mention no names, Shell and Scuderia Ferrari, have none, then what do you think that means? This article continues, the least advanced as far as the sustainable fuel providers is Shell. Their Ferrari suppliers, which has opted for a different technique that is currently causing them problems. Oh, the humanity. As if Scuderia Ferrari need any more problems. They can't build a car. Their drivers are struggling. Charles Leclerc is at the end of his tether, on his last nerve, has zero patience left, is about to leave the team. One of the quickest drivers currently on the grid, point to point, for all of his multitudinous foibles and errors of the unforced variety committed. And now you get this. They're meant to be building this ambitious project and doing a Spec A, Spec B, steel cylinder heads with a view to increase reliability, only to hear that the fuel that they're putting in the car is last of the late breakers. Shell are behind the 8 ball. Aramco have the whip hand. Oh, the humanity. Let me tell you about this as well. Techie things. Ralf Schumacher's come out and he's talked about Max Verstappen. It's apropos. Lest we forget that yesterday was Michael Schumacher's birthday. Keep fighting, therefore, Michael. Born on the 3rd of January, 1969. There we go. 1969. He got it right in the end. Ralf Schumacher says that there are similarities on the back of last year's performance between Max Verstappen and his brother, Michael Schumacher, the Reagan Meister. Now, I've long said that there are similarities. Of course, it'd be disingenuous to say that there is not. However, I think Senna is the comparison. I'll be honest, I've always thought that Senna is the Max Verstappen comparison, the blitzkrieg pace. Let me tell you about this. Schumacher says that he thinks that the gene and the aura that Max Verstappen exhibited in 2025, turning around a 104-point deficit, putting the team on his back, kicking and screaming, and bringing them ever so close to the mountaintop that his victory, 2 points, was the delta in the end. That is Michael Schumacher's playbook. That's what he did in 1996. He didn't need to leave Benetton and go and embark upon a challenge, turn around Scuderia Ferrari. He didn't need to do that, but he did it. He could have won himself another couple of championships had he stayed at Benetton, for they were the dominant team at the time when he left, but he sought out the challenge because that's what champions do. Max Verstappen didn't choose this. He was chosen in 2025. But I mean, how did he respond to the challenge? Ralf Schumacher says, what has emerged from that is quite remarkable. The team has grown, as far as Max Verstappen's leadership, into quite the unit on the back of all the chaos. The Christian Horner leaving, Helmut Marko, Rob Marshall, Adrian Newey et al., Jonathan Wheatley too, especially with Lauren Mekies and the team of engineers around Max Verstappen. Max, continues Ralf Schumacher, is somebody who can get an awful lot out the car. We've seen that in comparison with Yuki Tsunoda or Liam Lawson, but it was nevertheless a great team performance. Max has changed all of that, the underperformance. He has been able to bring that extra bit of something, the skill and the aura that Michael Schumacher also had over humanity. That's proper praise, eh? He can unite, lead, and take a team around him. The fact that people will walk through fire and walls for you is decisive. Verstappen now also has that Michael Schumacher gene over humanity. Ralf Schumacher out here, listen, he's partial to a cheeky polemic soundbite, right? But way to bring water to tears to a grown man's eyes. That Max Verstappen has the Michael Schumacher gene, techie that. I've always said that I think Senna is the comparison because of the pace, because of the ruthlessness, and the type of things that Max Verstappen is prepared to do. But again, there are similarities. There have to be similarities to Max Verstappen's godfather, right? Oh, and by the way, Ford have been talking about the extent of their remit as far as they're assisting Red Bull in the Red Bull Ford powertrain project. This is a bit techie because people have spoken about the old compression rates that Red Bull have stolen Mercedes employees and therefore stolen Mercedes intellectual property, that they've done something similar as far as the compression rates and are running at track temperatures 18 to 1 or as near as makes no difference, whereas the regs specify 16 to 1. That's as maybe Ford's remit was always going to be the electric portion, 50-50, lest we forget, is what we're running in 2026. 50% electric, 50% ICE. Why does that matter? Well, Ford was supposed to be bringing in the electric component knowledge. But this chap, Mark Rushbrook, performance director of the Red Bull Ford powertrain or power unit project, says the following. What we didn't expect and what wasn't a priority for us initially was the combustion engine. I don't know what to make of this. As we were working on the electric part of it, as outlined at the outset, and we saw what was going on with the combustion engine, we saw opportunity to participate and contribute. Now, listen, I don't know whether he's just padding his own book here. I don't know how much of a pinch of salt we should take with this. But I mean, like, Honda, look, okay, I know Honda don't work on the powertrain anymore, but they've been working on it as near as makes no difference for the past bloody 4 years. You mean to tell me that Ford are going to come in there and tell Honda something about the no, I don't believe it. About the internal combustion portion of this power unit? No, I don't know. I understand. I get it. There is a disconnect in the lead time, the critical path analysis. I understand it, but that sounds like chaos. Or maybe they've just misread, right? Maybe I'm misreading. Maybe they're more collaborative, and they're to be given credit for that. Listen, I don't know. That sounds like chaos over there at Red Bull Powertrains. Red Bull Ford powertrains as they're now known. It's all PR lowering and raising expectations, says Max, to keep the view going, and we are all food. I love I love them. Max and Senna can throw their toys out the pram, but Max has improved a lot over the years, 1000%. Another Ford versus Ferrari race for the last spot. 150 ex-Honda staff too, says Max. I believe it once Cosworth is involved. Ford has no connections to Cosworth. Isn't Cosworth? I feel like Cosworth is like the old name for... Isn't it just like Empire? I think it's just... nomenclature there. Isn't that just terms of art? Let me tell you about Christian Horner, the main event. By the way, guys, I appreciate each and every single one of you to the moon and back. This F1 news beat never sleeps. It's good in Turkey. Go on then. Christian Horner, you know already that he was sacked, I want to say, around the Silverstone Grand Prix last year for a couple of different reasons. Underperformance, the fact that he didn't have the gravitas nor the power to save himself. And by power, I mean shares. He always wanted to become an equity donny. Ironically, just like his old mate, Toto the Boy Who Cried Wolf, who owns 33% of Mercedes F1, in addition to being team principal come CEO. Christian Horner didn't have that. Yeah, he was marketing director. Yeah, he was CEO. Yeah, he was team principal. But in his efforts, his best endeavours to spin off Red Bull Racing Technologies fell at the first hurdle. It was Oliver Mintzlaff, it was Mark Mateschitz, it was Charlie Mavidja, and he couldn't get it over the hurdle despite his best efforts at politicking to do so. Christian Horner was sacked not because of any of the aforementioned, but because of underperformance. Had he been performing and optimising for Max Verstappen's circumstance and probability of winning a Drivers' Championship, his 5th consecutive Drivers' Championship, by the way, I'm guessing in a hypothetical world that Christian Horner would be still team principal of Red Bull Racing, but he is not. There was rumour going into 2026 that Adrian Newey becoming TP of Aston Martin were just a placeholder ahead of a Red Bull reunion per se. Adrian Newey, Christian Horner, Max Verstappen. That was the rumour about 2027. Lawrence Stroll's will. However, he kiboshed that, didn't he, Stroll? Though he said that he's looking to pull together the Galacticos as far as engineers in F1. Mention no names, Adrian Newey, Andy Cowell already over there managing the power unit operation with Honda. He didn't fancy himself some Christian Horner, that the shoe simply didn't fit. Adrian Newey therefore still has the whip hand as a placeholder. Some say though, and again this is a side mission, some say that Giampiero Lambiase potentially will be shoehorned in there as team principal in the first portion of 2026. Put a pin in that for now. But I think that listen, is that definitely going to happen? Is that an eventuality for sure? Well, not yet. This is still F1 rumour and speculation. But is there a non-zero probability of Giampiero Lambiase taking over from Adrian Newey, a placeholder of a team principal? I think so. This article, though, however, says you want to focus on Christian Horner, that potentially over the next couple of weeks, there will be an announcement. He wants to get himself back on the grid. There is vengeance in Christian Horner's eyes. What does the opportunity need to look like? Well, there are only so many opportunities going right. Aston Martin done. Where else could he fit in? Mercedes aren't going to have it. Like what? Toto Wolff has the whip hand and the red pen already. Alpine, however, Fabio Briatore, for context, was brought in there to build up the asset value of Alpine so that they could spin it off. A fist stinks from the head down as far as commitment or lack thereof. All of the Renault hierarchy, the C-suite exec level bods have long been dialed out of this F1 project. They see it as a money drain. It's been sucking life out of them. It was always meant to be a bloody engine project, show off how sexy and brilliant the Renault engines are, but they don't even make them anymore. So what is the point? The C-suite exec level bods will be saying. Loads of them are dialed out. How many team principals have they cycled through? A gazillion. It was once upon a time the 100 race project. What happened to that? Otmar Safnauer, Sato, all of them. It's mess over there at Renault. So if indeed you are Christian Horner and you want to save and turn around a team, what better team to join than Alpine. Yeah, it's chaos. Fabio Briatore, what's he doing over there? Executive advisor, executive director, depending on who you speak to, it could be both. It's absolute chaos. But what does Fabio do now with Christian Horner? You can't have Christian Horner and Fabio Briatore at the same team, surely. Nah, I don't think there's room enough for both of them operationally. Christian Horner will depose Fabio Briatore, even though they're good mates. Fabio Briatore was brought in to do one thing, achieve a sale, and to do that he needed to increase the asset value of Franco Colapinto. Would have played a part in that. Of course he would have. Comes with his Mercado Libre sponsorship, $20 million worth per year. Carlos, slim money, but that's as may be. Christian Horner said to have achieved, to secured an investment said to be worth 763 million euros, worth 600 million Great British pounds. He now has the financiers. You know, already we spoke about this, that he's been to the Middle East over the past couple of months, and so to the United States of America, with a view to get the signatures of investors, secure investment, so that he can pummel that into an Alpine and get himself what he needed all the while. Shareholder equity stakes, 24% of. Now, we know that this 24% number is quite important, right? Because the celebrities, by dint of Autoro Capital and Maximum Effort Investments, Michael B. Jordan, Ryan Reynolds et al., 24% is how much they bought in. Therefore, Christian Horner is looking to purchase their stake from them. They bought in at 200 million euros in 2023. And here's where the numbers are a bit fugazi, chat. I'm going to be honest with you. 200 million in 2023. I know that F1's done one of these. 24.5 billion is the market capitalization of the entity that is F1. It's done one of these since Drive to Survive and 2021 and COVID. One of the only sports franchises still to be putting on live events. Then yeah, it's gone gangbusters. But 200 million into 763. That's an order of magnitude, an increase, a fourfold increase over 2 years. That makes no sense. These numbers are fugazi. I'm putting on my F1 investigative cap and I'm calling bull feathers on these numbers. An order of magnitude of 4 in 2 years. No, that's nonsense. I think the number that we need to tinker here with is the 24%. If 600 million Great British pounds is the number, then Christian Horner will be buying in at about 40% or 50% potentially. The number, the percentage, the equity number will be closer to 40 than it will 20. That's wrong, chat. 1.4 billion was the valuation of Alpine only a couple of years ago, and you're telling me now that it's 4 billion? No, negative. 4 billion is Mercedes and McLaren. No, those numbers are wrong. But yeah, instead he's going to buy in. And I'm keen to see Christian Horner back on the grid. I think F1 is a poorer space, a more boring space for his absence. We need some fire-breathing dragons as team principals. It can't be come by our PLC each and every single time. It's techie. Wait, am I dreaming again? You're not dreaming again, Max. Happy place. Horner at Alpine, so he has to be nice to Toto in order to get the engines. I don't think so. Well, Toto has already said, that he wants to bring down the number of teams to which they provide engines, power units. I'm telling you. Listen, Mercedes engines, power units, and Christian Horner. It sounds implausible, but listen. Sometimes in F1, anything can and usually does happen. It's going to get Toto will cancel Alpine's energy contract if Horner goes that. I don't think he can. I think they've got a contract. I think it's signed in blood. Do you know what I mean? No, you're a legend, Max. Listen, be back 8 p.m. It gets mad and it gets techie. Where was Mercedes' value recently? I want to say they were 4.5 billion. I might be mixing that up with McLaren. Maybe McLaren were 5 and then Mercedes was 6. Big numbers though. But between 4 and 6. I mean, it's a big margin of error. I can't remember. 4 and 6 billion. It does sound fantastic. But fantastic in the literal sense, Lemps, or fantastic in the euphemistic sense. I'll put Lewis to Alpine, Max to Mercedes. I can't see that. This will be Lewis's fun. Listen, I kept on seeing. I've heard a lot of people say of late that that they'd just like for Lewis to retire now. Not even wait it out 4.6. There we go for Mercedes. I wasn't a million miles off them, Max. Yeah, no, I've heard a couple of people say that they want Lewis to retire, not at the end of this year, excuse me, but nowish. I think this will be Lewis's final tour. I think it should be Lewis's final tour, final year in F1. We know that he's got we know that there's potential to extend the contract by an additional 12 months, but should he? Nah. Don't let the sport retire you, Lewis Hamilton. Like, it's too good. It was too good for too long to allow F1 to retire him. Like, I don't want that for him. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's poetic, nor would it be apropos. I want to see a couple of wins from Lewis this year. It'd be good. Oscar to Ferrari potentially, or Oscar to Red Bull maybe. Driver silly season kicks off right in earnest straight away. Piastri to back to Alpine, make a break. Ferrari read the memo. Max, I don't know. I think Ferrari's, listen, I hope they make mugs of me. I'd love to see Charles and Lewis in a fire-breathing dragon of a Project 678. 67, but as at the time of writing, it feels like it's chaos over there. Operationally, they don't know what they're doing. The fuel's dodgy. The project very ambitious. Their trick, their secret genius idea, is crafted at the altar of reliability, like the steel engine cylinders. It's not pace. You're not talking about lap time. You're talking about reliability. That's chaos. I just think that's almost an admission, not of defeat, but of they talk all of this stuff that they've been super ambitious with the project, but everything I'm seeing on the ground, it sounds like they're playing defense as far as their design philosophy. I just think they're too mishmash. You need to get some proper people in there that can, like an Adrian Newey, that can, like, do you know what I mean? That can make sure that everybody's pulling in the same direction and not doing the wire, pushing and pulling a table through a door concurrently. And that's exactly what it feels like they're doing in a project, a sporting endeavour, as technical and as millisecondy as Formula One. You can't afford to have these mugger. Every time they come over the radio and Adami does one of these, well, we are checking. That's indicative of you guys not having the minerals. It's just it's incompetence. Scuderia Ferrari Scuderia Ferrari incompetence. Everything is a day late and a dollar short. They look and smell like they can't do it. Like they don't have the requisite minerals to win races and championships. Let's face it, Ferrari hasn't had a great team since it was led by Brits. That hasn't checked Lemps. Yeah, I don't think you're a million miles away, sadly. I don't want to typecast, but there is something to be said for a good working culture. But I feel like Lewis is trying desperately to, bless Lewis, I feel like he's desperately trying to make changes. But he almost needs to drive the car like shot. He needed to be like 86 points down the road from Charles for his words to hold any water, right? Now that he's 86 points to the bad as versus Charles, like who you can't even speak Italian. They'll be like, what are you doing? Like, you're meant to learn it. You're learning Italian on Duolingo, fella. How about you get yourself over to Fiorano and spend some time with the engineers? Stop taking these PR photos, do you know what I mean? To make it look like you're at the factory when you are not, is what they will be saying. And that's where, I don't know, it's a struggle for Lewis. And I don't think Lewis is saying wrong things. When he goes to Canada and he looks at the way they're setting up the car and he's like, went around here a gazillion times, the circuit de Gilles Villeneuve. What you're doing here is counterintuitive, counterproductive, even nonsensical. I think he's right. I think Lewis is right, but his POV is undermined by the 86 points, by the lack of podiums when Charles scored 7. Like, you just can't. If you're not the driver, then I don't really want to hear anything from you. If I were one of the Ferrari engineers, but that's just my put. It's a tough ask, this, and that's why it's not lost on me. The irony that Michael Schumacher's birthday yesterday, the one dude in recent times, notwithstanding, I mean, including Prost and Mansell and Kimi, I suppose Kimi got one done, and Alonso and Sebastian, The one dude who's managed to go over there and build a successful team in his own image had a name. And his name is the Regenmeister, the Red Baron, the one we know as Sir Michael Schumacher. Between now and next time, the prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.